Welcome to the show called Let's Talk Homeschool, brought to you by Apologia Educational Ministries. This is the show where we talk about everything homeschooling: the who, what, when, where, why, and how. We want to affirm and encourage you in the decision to homeschool, challenge and inspire you to take it to new heights, and celebrate everything you get to experience along the way in this adventure of a lifetime. I'm your host, Davis Carmen, and today we have a special guest, Julie Ross. I want to remind you, our listening audience, that you can now watch us on YouTube, or you can continue listening on your favorite podcast app. Today's show is titled A Gentle Feast. Okay, Julie, let's talk homeschool.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored.
Well, welcome. So let's start by letting you have a chance to tell our audience a little bit about you, your homeschool background, your family, anything that you'd like to just give as an introduction to who Julie Ross is.
Well, we could be here all day, but I'll give you the brief version of that. So yes, I've been in education for over 30 years now, which just makes me sound really old at this point. But I was a public school teacher, and then I left that to start a private Christian school. And then I started having more and more children and decided that I wanted to be home with them. So I have 5 children, and I've been homeschooling for over 20 years now, and about 15 years in, let's see, what year is it now? About 10 years in, around there. I just got really burnt out. I had taken what I was using as a public school teacher and tried to duplicate that at home. And, we had a workbook for every subject, and, we were just checking boxes all day long. And I just thought, there has to be something better than this. And I remember reading the book For the Children's Sake by Susan Schaefer Macaulay. And if anyone is interested in Charlotte Mason, that's your gateway. I actually got that book from my church's library when I was a public school teacher. And I just love that book and the picture that she gave for the education that her daughters received in a Charlotte Mason school in England. And I'm like, you know what?
Yeah.
I need to get that book back out and find out more about this person. And so that's when I started digging into Charlotte Mason's volumes, which I have in the picture if anyone's watching on YouTube behind me. They're not for the faint of heart. And back then, there really wasn't a ton. Like, I was in like a Yahoo forum to try to figure out, like, what do I actually do on Monday? Like, this is a beautiful way to educate. This sounds really lovely, but I have 3 children under the age of 3 while I'm homeschooling these 2 elementary children, and I just need someone to tell me what to do. And there really wasn't that. So I had to learn a lot through trial and error. And as I started getting my own system and finding routines and books that were working well, I had other moms asking me, like, how are you doing this? Tell me how it works. And so A Gentle Feast was kind of born very naturally out of what I was doing in my own home, and then being able to kind of package it and help other homeschool moms do the same thing.
Okay, so you're well down this journey. 20, I think you said 20 years of homeschooling. How old are the kids now?
So I have a 25, 22, 17, 16, almost 15.
All right, so you have some homeschool graduates.
Yes.
You crossed that finish line, but you got the younger ones too, coming up into high school
Yes, I
ages.
call them littles, but now that they're like applying to colleges, I got to stop calling them that probably.
Right. Well, the good news there is it sounds like you've had a lot of the typical ups and downs of a homeschool journey. You get
Absolutely.
started, you see a vision, you start down a good path. You connect with Charlotte Mason and you see, oh, that's a good fit for our family. But then you meet typical challenges. You have to adjust. So
100%.
tell us, you mentioned some about the challenges that you faced early on. Expound upon that. What were some of the other driving forces that said Charlotte Mason is the teaching philosophy that we want to have in our family, and the beginning of how you started implementing that to your specific family?
Yes. So I've always been a huge fan of books. I just believe in the power of stories and words. I was the kid that, was sitting on the edge of the playground reading the whole entire time. And so I wanted to provide my kids an education that was full of stories and not workbooks, but I didn't really know how to do that. And so it was a lot of reading for myself. And because I had a background in education, I knew a lot of books already. Because I had started a private Christian school, I knew, like, okay, this is for this age, this is for that age. And that really helped me. but yeah, in terms of challenges, I had three kids under the age of three. My fifth child had like chronic ear infections, didn't sleep through the night for a very, very long time. We moved 11 times in 13 years.
Ooh.
Um, yeah. And so lots of life. And I think that's really important because I think we can get this idealistic view of homeschooling. Social media prop it thankfully that
Right.
wasn't around back then,
Right.
so I didn't have that. But just even talking to other people, you think it's this beautiful, it's always idyllic. I had this view that I was going to be like Marmee and Little Women, and we would just sit around the fire and all this stuff, and then like life happens because you can't separate that from life because it's your home and it's your family. But I have learned to see that that is actually the most beautiful thing, and it's the most challenging things that we have walked through as a family. And there's way more than what I just shared, but that is what has actually made us so much stronger
Mm.
as a family, and that is what has shaped my children, and that's what God has used to make them the people that they are. And so those aren't distractions from the work that you're doing. Those aren't, obstacles to what God has called you to. They're actually part of that refining process. And so it's really helped me to kind of reframe of, oh, this is the education.
Right.
How we respond to this challenge, whatever it is, because there's always going to be something. This is what is going to be part of my children's story. Sometimes it's things that we don't want to be part of our children's story
Mhm.
that are, okay, well, how can we redeem this? How can we use this for good? And allow God to kind of do that refining process.
Right. Well, I tell you what, we moved 3 times in 3 years, but 11 times in 10 or 10 and 11, whatever you said.
11
That,
and 13, yeah.
okay. Yeah, I was just, oh my goodness. I can't even fathom what that might look like for a family. But the beautiful thing about homeschooling is, even though you're moving, you can continue the homeschooling journey
Yeah,
even amidst those moves, but it's still difficult. There's still the challenges,
sure.
acclimating to a new environment, new friends, new churches, all that. So, um, a gentle feast emphasizes this family style approach, and I love how you're not just talking about homeschooling, but you're already alluding to this is a family
Mhm.
event. This is a family project in a sense that you're on. You're doing it together. You're not doing it as little individual islands, and you got these multiple kids that are close in age, but two different age groups of sorts. And so,
Yeah.
how do you use the Charlotte Mason approach, the family style approach? Within the gentle feast way of teaching multiple ages at the same time without, like you say, burning yourself out or burning the kids out.
Yeah, and like I said, I didn't start out that way. So it was, okay, this kid is doing this complete set of materials, and then this kid is doing this complete set of materials. And I felt like I was like running a th three-ring circus all day long or
Right.
playing whack-a-mole. Like, I got this down, now I got this down, not this fire. And I was like, this isn't what I want. And I did want to do a lot as a family. I did want that family kind of culture. And now that I have older children, like getting to hear their perspective looking back, like that's what they remember is those things that we did together as a family. So we start off our mornings in a gentle feast with morning time, which is Bible and one other thing. The one other thing I call beauty subjects. So it could be looking at beautiful artwork, listening to classical music, reading poetry, that kind of thing.
I like that.
And so that's all ages. And all ages can look at a painting, and one might be like, there's a boy and a dog. And then another one might be like, well, this really reminds me of the Monet painting we learned last year. And, and so each child can take what they need and will relate it to their educational experiences that they've already had. So it's a really beautiful way to kind of get that perspective. But the younger kids, I feel like they get the most benefit because they're hearing all this from their older siblings all these years.
Right.
And so they kind of start to do some of these in-depth thinking a lot earlier, I have found. Um, and so we're all together for that. And that has really been so beautiful. Even with teenagers, I do let them sleep in a little bit longer now. But by 9 o'clock, we're all starting, we're in our pajamas. I don't care. It's like, come to the table. Let's light a candle. Let's have some beautiful music. Let's sing a hymn together. Let's just enjoy being together. And it's so refreshing rather than, okay, let's wake up and let's start your math and let's
Right.
do this thing. And I used to be like that kind of drill sergeant and then just have it be something that's like relaxing that you actually like, I want to come learn these beautiful things and see these beautiful pieces of art. And then that's when we do like our kind of individual subjects. But Charlotte Mason used forms instead of grades. So like form 1 is grades 1 through 3. Well, you can combine a lot in that. And you can even combine further, like a form 1 and a form 2 can often do like history or nature study together or science together. And people are like, well, we got to make sure that they're getting the skills and the things that they need for their age level. And so like language arts, math, those kind of like learning to read, those skill-based subjects, you need to do those at your child's level. But in terms of like books where or subjects where you're reading a really great book, oftentimes there's a great overlap in that. And again, your second grader might not get as much from Pilgrim's Progress as a 10th grader would, and that's to be expected. But Charlotte Mason said, we bring our children to the feast, and each small guest assimilates what they can. And it's a beautiful thing, like I said, again, to watch and have that shared experience. And then you have those shared memories around stories, they'll be like, oh, do you remember the story of, even like, it always comes up when we're all together as a family. They'll bring up some book we read about something. And it's really neat to see that kind of thing. And then at the end of the day, we would kind of I call it dessert because we want to end our day with something sweet. So even if the day feels sour and let's just be honest, everything kind of fell apart at some point, right? Like, let's come back together and end with something sweet. It could be a read aloud. We could be doing handicrafts. We could go on a nature walk together. We could listen to current events together, whatever it is, just something, a few minutes at the end of the day to regroup, have something shared, and then we can, make sure we clean up and start again tomorrow.
Well, even just the way you described that made the name Gentle Feast make sense.
Yeah.
It's like
people think I sell cooking products,
you described an educational buffet with starting with the right things, the priorities of Bible, and I love how you mix the beauty within that. Beautiful music, beautiful art. What a great way to just slowly start the day in a relaxed fashion, as you said, but in a way that's enjoyable. Let's enjoy this educational experience. There's some good food here at the table,
Yeah.
but we don't have to, inhale the food. Let's have a
Right.
gentle feast. So I really like how your name of the ministry, it just ties into how you structure the day for folks and still incorporate that Charlotte Mason, teaching philosophy, the forms that you mentioned. And the dessert at the end, that's a fantastic way to say you end with something sweet that's enjoyable, almost like a reward of sorts. And then the other thought that came to my mind is you talked about the shared educational experience. And that's one of the things we really enjoyed about our homeschool experience is all the things we did together as a family, both the learning, the travels, the discussions. It was when we now reflect on it and reminisce with our kids who have all left the nest, it's beautiful memories that we're all actually sharing and talking about, which happened at home. Sometimes in the wintertime around a fireplace, oftentimes around a dinner table, but in a relaxing context of home and family and other family members. So I just love the description and the picture that what you just painted for our audience to maybe try and emulate. So at the same time, you say life happens, and it definitely does. So
Absolutely.
when life starts happening and maybe a family starts feeling like they're drifting away from their priorities or their core values or the things they feel like they're getting off mission, so to speak, what are some actionable steps they can take to kind of get back on track?
Yeah, I think for me, it's always been morning time, like that, keeping that practice, even if we're moving, even if we have boxes everywhere, even if someone is sick, and just, lots of different, you can do morning time anywhere, and so it makes it easy to transport, but it's, again, to me, it's just like a sacred spiritual practice. Like if we wake up and we do these things, like we are going to be different people and God is going to teach us and work through us. And so there have been times where literally the only thing we could do was morning time and, some reading and math in there.
Yeah.
And God always met us in that. We went through a super difficult time in 2019, and again, it just so happened, of course, right? This was part of the General Feast Curriculum Cycle 1. Our Bible memory verse for that term was the armor of God.
Mm.
And the read aloud was Heidi. And I just remember, like, I
Oh,
could not get through that book without crying every day when I was reading it to the kids. I'm like, Mom, are you okay? And I'm like, but this little girl has such
Mhm.
faith
Yes.
and she's going through really hard times. And we're going through really hard times right now. And so this book is so encouraging to me. And I couldn't wait to keep reading it because it was what I needed. It was like the spiritual bond that
Yeah.
I needed. And so having those kind of rituals will keep your family grounded even when other things go amiss.
Right. You mentioned when kids get sick. We that happened with our 7 kids, and one of our rooms we call the gathering room normally. It's where everybody can come out of the bedrooms, and we'd often gather there and have our family worship. But it also doubled as sick bay. And so when kids got sick, you know it's going to the next kid and the kid after that.
Yep.
So
Yep.
Rachel would just kind of put everybody in sick bay, watch Winnie the Pooh, read some short books,
Yeah.
and everybody's just trying to get well and rest. But again, it was part of the homeschool day. Is okay
Mhm.
today and this week. It looks like we're going to be in sick bay most of the time.
I
Uh,
love that.
so it's again, like you're saying, it's life. It's getting back on track and taking those detours that are necessary or the ones you didn't even intend to take. So, but at the same time, we made some mistakes in our homeschool journey that we had to really come back. So, what would you suggest to families when they make a mistake? How can they turn that into actually an opportunity to do this better, to do what really matters to them?
Hmm. Yeah. You know, I was thinking about that because I don't like necessarily the term mistakes. I do feel like we are learning alongside our children. And in learning, you often learn by trial and error. And so, like Thomas Edison said, I learned 1,000 ways not to make a light bulb. Well, I learned 1,000 ways not to homeschool at first. And so it's like, okay, that didn't work with that kid. Or,
Yeah.
wow, I'm putting way too much pressure on this kid. Turns out they actually have a learning disability, or they actually have dyslexia, or they have something, and I'm like, I put so much pressure on them. And, you have to work through that kind of mom guilt of when you realize those things. But that lesson taught me to relax a lot. I was so high strung and felt like I had to control everything and I had to make sure I was doing everything right or it would all fall apart. And my children, I would completely mess them up and it was all on my shoulders and totally forgot that, like, God was with me too. And,
Yeah.
and I would get so stressed out and anxious. And then our children, whether we say anything or not, they pick up on that. We have these mirror neurons, and our
Right.
children are picking up on our anxiety, whether we say anything or not. And I realized this isn't how I want my children to feel. And so I need to stop feeling this way. And I had to learn to work on myself and my own mindset and calming myself and taking some of that pressure off before I can be the kind of mom that can have grace, that can offer
Right.
forgiveness, that can rest, that can let my child work at their own pace and not feel like I'm going to melt down every day because I'm so scared of what's going to happen. And so, if you can relate to that, and there's all kinds of different things as well that can happen in our homeschool. But to me, homeschooling allows an amazing opportunity for repair. And studies have
Mm.
shown that that has the greatest impact on children. It's not necessarily that they need a perfect parent that's never going to make a mistake. What they need is a parent who's willing to say, I'm sorry, and I messed up.
Yeah.
And I did put too much pressure on you, and I'm really sorry. I want to do things different. I'm learning just like you're learning. And do you forgive me? And that's the beautiful thing about kids. They are the most
Oh, I
forgiving,
know.
loving, wonderful humans. I wish we could all be like that and bottle that up and keep it in adulthood
Right.
as well, right? So, yeah, just be willing to have that conversation, but be willing to be honest to look and say, okay, what patterns do I have that are negatively impacting my homeschool? Because we often can
Mhm.
think like, oh, if I just switch curriculums, oh, if I just
Yeah.
am more organized, oh, if I just, sign my kids up for these classes, it will magically fix everything. And I have learned that continually trying to fix things, trying to find something different when really it was this person right here who needed to learn to work on herself and her own anxiety.
Well, that kind of leads to the next question I had for you. And it's really easy for homeschool parents, especially moms who are in the trenches, to compare themselves to other homeschool families. Social media doesn't help. People, see these perfect families, these perfect kids, and they think that I'm not doing good enough. So, what would you say to those moms who are in that comparison trap? How to give themselves a break there and not get sucked into the vortex, so to speak, of all this comparison that it usually isn't very realistic, anyways.
Right. No. And, again, it's like, okay, social media is optional. You don't have to go on it.
Right.
There is that choice
Very
to not
true.
look at those things. But even if we don't have that, like I said, I didn't have that when I first started, but I was still comparing, right? You're sitting on the playground and you're talking to this mom, and my kid's 4 and they know how to, conjugate Latin verbs. And you're like, what? I mean, it happens everywhere because we're humans and we compare ourselves. And so, for me, it has been trusting in God's wisdom for the children that He has given me and learning to see my children for who they truly are and loving them for where they're at, not where I want or think they should be at that moment.
No, that's very good.
It's
Um,
easier said than done,
it
but when you
is. It
when you
is.
can look them in the eye, when you can slow yourself down and you can start to have gratitude for who they are right now,
Yeah.
that has made the biggest difference. I would just journal. I love this kid so much. I am so grateful for this kid. I love that they, always have a very strong opinion about everything. And, you know, and even the things that would drive me nuts, I'm like, okay, how can I see this differently, God?
Yeah.
And once I grew to love my kids for who they were and
Mhm.
start to accept myself for who I am,
Right.
then the comparison didn't matter anymore. I could celebrate with someone who was there, have this beautiful, perfect Instagram house that they built themselves and it looks absolutely fabulous. And I'm like, that must be so amazing to have built that with your own hands and your kids get to do that. That's so wonderful. Right now, my roof's falling apart, but like I love my kids and I love my life.
Yeah.
And so I can celebrate other people too.
Yeah. Well, you started great. Social media is optional. If it's a
Yeah.
problem for you, step away. I mean, it is part of our reality today, but we don't have to be on it. And it usually is going to bother women, especially on the
Yeah.
comparison. Men have different social media issues, but like you say, it's optional. But one of the things you said reminded me of our kids. We have 7 very different kids, I'm sure your 5 are very different as well. And we were constantly, in our words, trying to rewire our microwave kid and turn him into a crock pot. Uh,
I
because
love
we
that.
liked the crock pot kids. They were a little easier to manage.
Yes.
And as soon as we realized that, God wired him this way, my job is not to rewire him. My job is to help him
Yes.
pursue God's calling as a microwave. And
Yep.
he's going to be out there. He's going to be, the tornado in the room and very charismatic. And that's good because God needs people like that just as well as he needs those that are compliant and slow and easy and
Hmm.
responsible and don't, create a trail behind them quite as much. But
I
I,
love that. I love that analogy of the microwave. That's really good. And I think we often we can get annoyed with the kids sometimes, I feel like, that are most like us.
yes.
And so it really does take getting to offer yourself grace and love
Yeah.
yourself for your weaknesses, and then you can love your kids for theirs
Hmm.
and enjoy them. That
Yes.
really is
Oh,
what it
yes.
comes down to. Like if you can just enjoy being present with your kids, the
Mhm.
comparison really just goes away. It
It's
doesn't
so
matter.
true. That is so true. And yeah, I totally agree with you. So, um, you've been through this a while. You've been homeschooling a while. You've had ups and downs. You got this gentle feast, which is a beautiful vision for what the day can look like. Uh, how would you now define educational success? You were a teacher for a while. You've been a
Mhm.
homeschool mom. Uh, how would you describe what educational success can or should look like today?
Yeah, I think I'll go to Charlotte Mason's words. She says at the end of the day, it's not so much how much does the youth know, but upon which, how much does he care? And how large
Mm,
is the room upon which he sets his feet? I, Educational success is how large is the room
I
and
like
how
that.
much do they care about it? And being able to offer so many different experiences, getting to read so many books where they're putting themselves
Mm,
in the shoes of so many different people from all around the world, from all different time periods, and then to have that hunger to keep going into larger and larger rooms. Because this
mm.
kind of education, again, it's not just filling an empty bucket with information, it's not filling, providing a feast with ideas. And when your mind is full of ideas, you become a magnanimous person,
Mm,
and you become a person who has empathy and cares about other people and who can think deeply on lots of different subjects. And ultimately, that's, I feel like, the kind of people our world needs, who can think critically, who aren't just told, what to think,
right.
but they know how to think, and people who actually care tremendously and deeply for other people so that they can take their faith and they can apply all these ideas and all these beautiful
Right.
things, and they might turn it into some beautiful music or some beautiful art, or they might be, rewiring someone's heating and air conditioning,
Mm.
but they're doing it in such a caring and amazingly talented way that no matter what they end up doing in life, this kind of education shapes them as a person.
This that is very beautiful right there as well because I that creates a picture for me of children that graduate from a homeschool who actually enjoy their work, their calling, their vocation, uh, because they see purpose in it. Uh, and they, as you said, they care for the people they're serving or helping or providing a service for. And that makes the world a much better place as we can all, appreciate that. So
Mhm.
homeschooling is, why that's one reason why we're advocates for homeschooling. It can allow
Absolutely.
for this kind of thinking as parents to bring in something like Charlotte Mason and that approach and teaching philosophy into the daily, rhythms and routines in your family, all the shared experiences, all the books that you read together.
Mhm.
So many of our family conversations today are about the books we're reading. Uh,
Absolutely. Yep.
and
Still.
and we have fantastic debates that are very hearty and energetic, but with just a thrill of we enjoy each other's company and thoughts and
Mhm.
opinions on the beauty of this piece of literature or the idea that is presenting. So and all this is largely because we homeschooled together as a family and did something very similar to what you did at Gentle Feast, but uh, not with I just love the picture of the starting the day with Bible and beauty and ending with this sweet dessert.
Mhm.
And painting that picture for what that means you're doing practically through the day. And so often that's the beautiful blend that people are looking for is not just the why to do something or the
Right.
philosophy behind it, but the practical how to. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah. No, I'm the same way. I think that's what, like you're saying, with our adult kids, right? So it's not just the books, you know, we're reading really great books, but then we're talking about them. And so, you can read really great books and then give your kid a fill in the blank worksheet with it or a 10-question recall thing. And that's not going to shape them as a person. What
Right.
shapes them is what you're talking about, where tell me about it. What did you learn from that? What did you think about that? And like the discussions, being able to articulate and share your opinion and put it respectfully and have it make sense and be coherent and intelligible is a tremendous life skill, no matter what it is you end up doing, right? And being able to like I said, think deeply about that because as you're talking with someone else, like it's not so much the pressure of did I get this right or get this wrong? And it ties back to your question about academic success, right? So it's not I got, a 99 out of 100, so that must mean I know this material.
Right.
It's can I take this material and can I explain it to you?
Right.
If I
Yeah.
can't, I don't actually know it.
That's so true.
Yeah.
So tell our audience where they can find more about you and a Gentle Feast. Are there some websites or emails that you'd like to share?
Sure. Agentlefeast.com is the website curriculum, but I also have my own podcast. If you um, enjoyed listening to this one, I would love for you to check it out. It's called The Feast Life. So we take the educational feast, but we talk about life and parenting and motherhood and all the other things as well.
That's fantastic. Well, folks, as always, it's hard to bring these conversations to a close, but it's that time. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. We hope you'll join us again next time. This has been Let's Talk Homeschool, brought to you by Apologia Educational Ministries. I've been your host, Davis Carmen, and our guest today has been Julie Ross with A Gentle Feast. Have a great day, and until next time, we are walking by faith and enjoying the homeschooling adventure of a lifetime.